tadi cik semana syaruci tanda weluwe di ta kamla da tamdi la kita cik seshe da di Quran ki sabjon nanglo la ta jone chungwa di deshe gang zu wesho lu me wesho di ta tanda zu de proposal chidwa di gang wesho lu ya tarwa konsu ki samsu di dig me gang zu wesho lu ya mare wesho lu di susu mutin yue me di ta tanda di chawo da proposal wesho lu di wa kyansu di sem sharo chikoji 안된 도진사 야 원수 외쇼 당가경에 탄다 음이 없지 달리 지었어 아니 다디 proposal 딜을 달봐 딜을 수수 못이요나 차야 양을 쓰라 그렇지 차야 갑도 장 양을 쓰 아니 tadi sumchaga tense sumchaga tense tangbo di yaogunje chosomba chembugirwa ta tanda chido chikton gute chosom dawaniwe gi che chosom larwa tanda pyo ranze yimbe gi ta chik sela jerwa di ta chenso rwsta rwa gejil tenso shukchimbu cheche niwa di tadi tensu chedangi taji langchong lamga rishira kade legu pedan di ani tse choksom la tene ani legu gochwe chirwa sumba di ani tadi legu gi gotinge rishita tanda de europeri tunzo giwa gotiye rishita tunze sumde ani konzi chiwozma ta konzi nyembo ta nganzo 유럽 개갑 셴바 망우지 요래 다든지 냠루 부터 디체제 이네 고팅에 데다데 스위스 기타나 스위스 관다 유럽 페리 튼소기 디체제 아니 다 디는 무티 요나 아니 고지 스스야 차야 야지 자가지 마사 파도 고지 참am 그렇잖아. 딱 모든 명이 연합소서 차장으로지 그렇잖아. 자, 가도 자 테스트스 그렇잖아. 아니 extension, right? 발숙 유나 무티 유다 매니저 파라리 마치다 extension. now 발숙 유나 자야 토스 켜놓고 싶지. 토스에나. 다 무티 유와디 디주듬시제 무티 메와디 칙제 아니 벌써 맹인이더라. 다리 가서 파시기는라 프로포절 랑 디주듬시 기망외도 tadi sabjoni badre tanda gemi ki shungna yubate bade tadi ganzu i sabjoni bade ta chik kokap sabaji me yana chik nyanga sabaji me chira dikol chinje kyansi
Hello, everybody. We as young Tibetans...
could you just briefly introduce yourself?
Oh,
Your name, sorry.
I'm Jim Senior, I'm 22 years old, and I live in Switzerland. We as young Tibetans in Europe most probably won't get the chance to take part in direct dialogue with the Chinese president, and neither will we be able to influence the outcome of the election process. But since the theme of this weekend is we take action, we ask ourselves, what can we do? It was clear from the beginning on that in the limited time and experience we have, we could not create the perfect campaign. But we still brainstormed on how a potential campaign could look like. We had one English and one Tibetan-speaking group. Originally, we wanted to combine the two campaigns after a day of work, but because of those two different backgrounds from each group, we both ended up with two very difficult results, but they were still very interesting, and so we kept them separate. But since the campaign is only an idea that we have that has to be further elaborated, we propose the following basic action plan for the Parliament to vote on. Next Chinese president, next opportunity or next threat. The change in the Chinese leadership presents an opportunity for Tibetans as new leaders come into power. It is our goal to achieve a substantial change of the Tibet policy under the future Chinese government. With the Chinese leadership coming, we feel the importance to create an impact on their future policy by both creating external pressure and working towards an internal change. External pressure will be achieved by addressing local governments during the election phase until January 2014. Internal change is a long-term goal which will be achieved by Chinese outreach. The International Tibet Network, ITN, and Students for a Free Tibet, SFT, will coordinate this campaign in collaboration with the European Tibet organizations. And now Denzel is going to present workshop number 1. Campaign number 1.
So I'll just give a background information for why we decided to go and talk about, my group decided to talk about the nomad issue, and that maybe Xi Jinping or the new leadership should halt or stop the nomad resettlement of 2.5 million nomads. So the reason why we didn't really go for a campaign about the self-immolations, the current crisis, is because there's already a global movement supporting this action, supporting the self-immolations, saying enough to China's actions on the Tibetans. And then we looked at why are the Tibetans self-immolating? And we feel that one of the reasons for their grievances is nomadic resettlement. The Chinese government have been quietly or secretly been removing traditional Tibetan nomads off their land into reservation camps, into housing projects, similar to what we have seen with the Aborigines, the Native Americans. And then we've seen the result of these places. The Aborigines and the Native Americans, they become stuck and isolated in their own land, but far away from, and what we've seen with this is that alcoholism rises, prostitution rises, and it's also basically the end of our traditional way of life. So we felt that this was a key thing to talk about. And then why we think it's really important, I guess, is because China is trying to blame the Tibetan nomads that they are ruining the grasslands, and they're telling the world, they're telling the scientists, they're telling the world that we have to remove these nomads because they are damaging the grass, and so for environmental reasons. They're using the title environmental crisis. But we as Tibetans and we as researchers and even Chinese scientists have actually said this is wrong. This is not the reason why the grassland is destroyed, is becoming damaged. The real reason why the grassland is becoming damaged is because of Chinese failed policies in the 60s and 70s when they came to Tibet. It's evident that it's theirs. So they're trying to use the environmental issue. But the real reason we have to question why do they really want to move the nomads? Nomads are able to move around the land freely, to travel, to move from here and there, and they have a mind of their own, you know. And they've always had this deep identity, this cultural identity within us, this Tibetan identity, this nomadic identity, and they're very proud of this. And since the Chinese had invaded Tibet, they've never really been able to control the hearts and the minds of the Tibetan people. And this fears them. They can't control our passion, our identity to be Tibetan. So therefore, they're taking them off, they're collecting the Tibetans. They're collecting them and they're dumping our people, these nomads, into these small concrete blocks with barriers around so that they can control them there. They can control their voice. They can quiet them down. So, and then it becomes very difficult for them to have an uprising or you know, it's even harder to crack down into them. So that's why the real reason China is removing the nomads, it is not because of the environment at all. Because they sell the idea to remove the nomads, they come to the nomads family and they say, okay, look, we'll move you here just for 10 years, okay? After 10 years, you can come back on the grassland, we'll give you 20,000 yuan, and you can stay here, be fine, and we'll look after the grasslands. But as soon as they've gone off the grasslands, what's on the grasslands? They're already mining, they're damming, they're stealing our resources, the Tibetan resources, to benefit their economy, to benefit their government. It is not in the interest of the Tibetan people and the Tibetan way of life.
So in our workshop, after deciding to focus on the Tibetan nomad resettlement program, we decided that for us as Western Tibetan youth in Europe, our objective of this campaign would be to get European governments to bring up the nomad issue when meeting Xi Jinping. So when the new Chinese leadership is announced, then we hope that with the media spotlight on China and its presidency, that we can bring some attention to what is happening right now to the nomads. And so with this, we have planned with the timeline, because since when they announce his new leadership, then he will go on some sort of diplomatic visits to countries, hopefully some Western ones, where we will then be able to make our voices heard and be able to highlight what's going on inside Tibet to the nomads. And this will end in January 2014 with the World Economic Forum, which can be our final event. So the key messages that we would like to get across in this campaign is one of urgency. Time is running out. The current programme aims to resettle all nomads by 2015, and they've already settled 1.5 million out of 2.5 million Tibetan nomads. Secondly, the nomadic way of life is the soul, dignity and root of Tibetan culture, and therefore should be preserved at all costs. Thirdly, the nomad policy is a failed policy of the previous Chinese government, and it's our hope that the new Chinese leadership will rectify the problem. So we tried to come up with some sort of potential actions that we could do, and some that we came up with included lobbying, so petition demonstrations, both in person and online. There's also another thing that we could do, which is raising awareness, because I think that this is an issue which is very under the radar and not publicised a lot. So one thing that we could do is that there are a couple of films and documentaries coming out about Tibetan nomads and what's happening right now. And we could hold local events inviting Western people and then showing them what is happening right now and then getting them interested and seeing what we could do further to help our cause. One other potential idea is an Occupy-style protest, where in front of government buildings in the West we can put up Tibetan tents, and that would be also a nice visual and a way to highlight the cause. One other potential idea that we came up with is a global action day. So we will coordinate in our different European countries to do certain actions on a certain day to publicise what's happening right now and to try and stop the Tibetan resettlement programme. And there's already a present Tibetan resettlement programme going on right now under SFT. So the aim of this campaign is that we will be one phase of it covering the Chinese leadership. So that's what we did in our campaign and in our workshop. And in the other workshop, then I'm going to talk about the outreach to the Chinese people.
Mimila Punsuchu, Tanda Susula Sakali Juji. That was the workshop Nibati group Tambudian. Tinoni, Karilana, George Chigmachi, Musaki, Jujendo, Monguchin, Demme, Juji Chigin, Juji Chig de Garina. Nasu Mountbag the Natu language of the Gari Conlare, Mountbag, Jana to Sinzin Sarpa de Shonigola, and Natu Linga Garicula, Shija Pundusia, Mido, Deva Tisanji, Ningasu, Main the Tonjuin. Then meet the Gari in Lavana Tombu, Jana, Mamoton, Jeva Chivito, Montu, Toton for some Jirishi Baziach. Dodo Garilla Coralana, Mount Bana, Jami Mamoton, Jami Monson Nolola, Monsuton Rami Toton Siaga, Goa the Paratechi, Ni Jami Nolola, Monsuton Rami Toton, Corta Tani, Yargiton Yaga, Tigonda Shito, Jujitri. Then by now, Jujitin Dingo, Jimson the Garilla, Jabjun, the Garilla, Tompung Asu, Jami Siate, Tompung Nisumbu, Jami Siate Kanaji, Homa Nasu, Ronson Shurti Kaptotela, Mozitong Nichapi, Yami Marmoxiva, Mak Namji Combajan and Dodeju, Tindi Ani Jami Siate, Homa Nasu, Ronson Masu Kong Hula, Ani Garilana. Namjing also such a did the Jew, Pangunda within the way. Moma Nasu Masu Konla, Jami Siate, Gati in such a sunu, making Ninji star in the Meju, who are saw in the Meju, but didn't you much on John Way? And it tells us how much you come to. The Imba in Nagarelana, being so Jami Siate, and that's Chadu Lana Jami la Mamon Saya. Chiton Samjayo. Could chapter Chiate, Chiton, Nija Logic Chapiorte, Yamba de Kachi, Chiton, Nabja Yore Lami, you are the content, Chiton Samja Hachi, not to Gobala, Homasai to Machi. Didn't I indicate Saya Chiton, Samja Yoba, Nolola, Gupa Chonchon Sanya Mare? Did I indicate Coronsu, Jimson de Gari, Kakdora Lana, Coronsula? Sanjur Julam Mopo Culture, Jami Contenton, Communist Party Sati, any Shu Tamder Chichi, any Tanda Berta, Shilula Kanaji Chongi Umeton, draw me totons and draw me Siadi, Toton, Sosu, Sotuk Ron Siado, Majo Ron Siado, any Tinicari Ume, Haku Yomare. Naro Lo Nila, Jami Nololi, Casakawan Rodain, Casakawan Soin, Kudu Chesaton Ju, Gigi. Nyamtakachi, Lupta Chimu, and Damda Soin. Dino Lingarum and Yamu Chonjoina, Koronsu, Yami Mombuji Dilapundu. Koronsu Nola, Yachaga, Juchu, Robi Toton Siado, Montu Siado, Haku Maris. Case, Robi Toton, Montu Siago, go on the Yacha Juchu, Hakuayena, Yami Mongo, Hakuayena, Tanda, Content Tonsia, Communist Party, and the Utsuji. Goni Oyo Shechi, that